Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Outside of the Church podcast. And we are going to start our Para-Scientology series here in a moment. I wanted to take a moment and mention that if you're interested in these podcasts and you find them enjoyable and you want to know more about Independent Scientology, we offer auditing and training. We have a personality test that you can take on ao-gp.org, and we can get you going on courses and in session using a theta meter on your end. We do remote auditing. We're a little bit different from the church in that way. We can do auditing anywhere on the planet with a decent internet connection, a camera, and a microphone. And that's all you need. And we will lend you a meter to get you going for the duration of your auditing. We have life repair package, clear package. We also sell by the intensive. Get in touch with us and we'll get you started on Independent Scientology. ao-gp.org. I'm here with Clinton. I almost called you Clinton. Can you believe that? I'm here with Quentin Stroud. And,
Quentin, Q
and we're going to get,
from Beverly 07.
yeah, we're going to get rolling with episode 1 of Para-Scientology. And Quentin is extremely enthusiastic about this. So I am going to sit in the passenger seat and let him take it away. So it's all yours, Quentin.
Wow. Well, listen, I'm super excited about this. For those of you who are getting to know me, since I'm fairly new to ALGP, I am a 23-year practicing psychic seer, where I have been working for many, many years, helping people just kind of get more insight and perhaps even foresight
Mm-hmm.
into kind of what's going on in their world, what's going on in their environment. And it's been a really, really um, good work, because it really helps people to kind of see beyond their current scope, beyond their current sphere,
Right.
into the more subtle things of life. And when when I first came across Para-Scientology, and theta perceptics, actually, I think it was in the book Science of Survival,
Mm-hmm.
and LRH first mentions theta perceptics, and
Mm-hmm.
he quickly lists a few things that theta perceptics involve. I'm like, wait, what? And I tried to read more, but it was no more. It was just one little blurb. And since that moment, Parascientology has stuck in my head, and it's something that I've always wanted to lean into. So I'm really happy to be having this conversation. So first of all, what is Para-Scientology? And of course, if we look at para means alongside or beyond, alongside, like parallel, right? And of course, Scientology is knowing how to know, right? Knowing how to know something. So when we talk about Para-Scientology, we're talking about what we know, but also things that are alongside of that, that might not fully have the fullness of it, but it's definitely something that one can maybe take a look at. Now, Parascientology, as it's defined in the hard to find words glossary, the flag hard to find words glossary, it says Parascientology contains, is a category of data in Scientology which includes all greater or lesser uncertain and questionable things. Things in Scientology of which the common normal observer cannot be sure with a little study. There are theories here, are groups of data, even commonly accepted as known data, even if it's commonly accepted as known. But if we can't fully be certain about it, if it's still a little questionable, if it's still like, we gotta kind of throw it into the bin of Parascientology. Now, LRH said in a lecture, he says that those things which are uncertainties, such as metaphysics, other worlds, spirits, space opera, the GE line, are all being put into a bin called Parascientology. So, whew,
Yeah. Well,
that's a big deal. Go
you've
ahead.
got you've also got here in our notes, you've got some of the classified bodies of data which fall into Parascientology are Dianetics, incidents on the whole track, the immortality of man, the existence of engrams containing pain and consciousness, and yet all perception, prenatals, prenatal engrams, secondaries, locks, clears, God, characters, and many other things, which, even when closely and minutely observed, still are not certain things to those who observe them. Such things have relative truth. Talk about a broad body of information. Dianetics. So, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about between now and Halloween. That's what this is all
Well,
about.
Well, I'll tell you, I get the Dianetics part, right? I get Dianetics being a part of Para-Scientology, not necessarily because it's unknowable, but
Mhm.
it was something that when LRH first started studying this and looking at how the mind works and analytical mind, the reactive mind, or whatever, that really wasn't Scientology per se. It's its own category of Dianetics.
Mhm.
So it is parallel or para-Scientology. It is parallel to Scientology in some sense. Um, and it is subjective. I'll say that too. It's a type of subjective auditing when you're doing dynamic auditing.
Mhm.
So whatever comes up in that person's experience, that's what comes up. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's what comes through. And so it's not necessarily certain that these things are observed, but they're relative truth. They're relative to that individual. So I get Dianetics, but the
Yeah.
rest of it,
Yeah.
whoo.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, that Dianetics is subjective. At the time in 1950, 1951, you were looking at something that, I mean, people probably stumbled on in different areas and things like that, but they didn't have an explanation for it. And then LRH came around, wrote this book. And so you've got these subjective things that you're dealing with that have symptomatic things that show up in the body. And so
Mhm.
these symptomatic things led him into these other avenues of parascientology, because that's how this whole thing got started, is 1950, 1951. And then all of a sudden along came the e-meter. And along with the e-meter, now you had something besides the person's recollection or whatever it was that they were telling their Dianetic auditor. And they're saying,
Mhm.
I'm picking up this and seeing this. And then the meter came around, the early one, and lo and behold, they started spotting things. They actually had, and I'm going forward, but we'll go back. They actually had a
Mhm.
meter that they would use, and you could put your attention into the room and you could spot a Thetan in the room
I love it.
on the meter. It is in the churches, the one on Hollywood Boulevard. They have a big, huge display of all of the meters from day one to present. And that meter is in there. And it's also in a video about the e meter. And they show how they used it. And they also had, and interestingly enough, they also had another type of meter where you could have a person put their attention somewhere in the room with this electrode. And when the person put their attention on the electrode, you would get a read on the meter.
Wow.
That's
Uh, uh,
parascientology.
what was that? Was that because they made a observation and that observation became well? Because if you think about it, like quantum physics and other ideas that our world consists of possibilities, right? Everything is a possibility or a probability or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the observer observes something, the observer makes it real.
Yeah.
You're literally mocking it up.
Yeah. Well, and to that degree, what you're doing is you're creating, it's a two-terminal universe, basic auditing principle here. It's a two-terminal universe. So sort of like when you connect a battery in the physical universe, objectively, you get a current. When you have a Thetan
Mhm.
that is putting something out there in a space in the physical universe, and they're putting it towards this where this electrode was, you're completing a circuit. Isn't that interesting?
Mm.
This is what they found, and
Yeah.
this opened the door to everything. When we're going to cover this later on, I'm tickled about this because we were looking this up before we started doing the podcast and the research. This opens the door to things like wishes. This opens the door to
Mhm.
portals. This opened the door to universes. This opened the door to ghosts, ghouls. And this isn't confidential. And we'll get into this in one of the podcasts we're going to be doing on Para-Scientology. Body Thetans, you name
Mhm.
all of this stuff became real because now you didn't just have somebody's word for it. You had a physical device that registered this, the meter.
Right.
This is where everything changed and Para-Scientology was born. Off the side rail, back to you, Quentin.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head because when when something is out reality, right?
Mhm. Right.
When something is out reality, it's out reality for the observer, for the person, the pre-clear, the individual, right? It's out reality for that person. That doesn't mean it's not real, and that doesn't mean it's not actual, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a reality. It's just not actuality for that individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there was this um it was talk about the Indians, Native Americans, and it was talking about when the ships were coming towards the New World,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the Native Americans were observing something that was different, and they were observing the waves as the waves crashed on the seashore.
Mm-hmm.
They were observing that this was weird, the way the waves were crashing on the seashore, because it wasn't something that they had seen before. And when they would look out over the ocean, they would just see clouds. And so they were seeing clouds, but then the waves were hitting the seashore really, and they were looking up and whatever, whatever. But it wasn't until it was too late that the ships came to the land, or
Mm-hmm.
came, closer to land, that they realized those weren't clouds, those were sails. But
Mm.
they had never seen those before.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought they were clouds. It was out reality for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
so
Right.
so they thought clouds were kind of floating above the water. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm saying this to say that when you observe, as we observe something, and just because it might not be in one's purview, it might not be in one's perceptic, doesn't necessarily mean it's not actual.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the way Para-Scientology kind of opens the
Right.
door up for like some of those things you mentioned. I think
Mm-hmm.
LH even talks about fairies and talks about other things. Like, it
Yep.
opens up this door for these other experiences that might be actual but can't be proven, or can't be said with certainty.
Right.
So I want to talk about this since you brought it up, because of course elephant in the room the big elephant in the room, of course, is the whole space opera, body things, the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be very delicate because, of course, there are things that should remain um, relevant to where a person is in their journey.
Right.
But
That's a very
but I'll say
that's a very
this.
important point. It's a very important
Oh,
point. And
absolutely.
I want to come back to that because I got something I want to say about that too. But go
No,
ahead.
no, you go ahead. Go ahead. Say on that.
Well, the interesting thing about Para-Scientology and all of the things that he talks about in the subject of Scientology, and we've talked about this in other podcasts and touched on it just a little bit, is and you might just take this right away from me and we'll go off on this tangent, is so many of the things that are talked about in Scientology that fall under the Para-Scientology umbrella are in so many other world religions and philosophies. But for some, yeah, the, but he jumps back on video. Okay, and the
Go
thing that
ahead. No, you're on it. You're on it.
yeah, the thing that I find funny is that for some reason the subject of Scientology, what LRH actually talked about, not the Church of Scientology, because this is the redheaded stepchild of the Church of Scientology, the corporate church. They don't want to talk about this stuff, and they've been deleting it, removing it so that it doesn't exist, sanitizing this because they don't want it in there. And that tells me everything I want to know. That's a withhold. That's not my point, though. The
Right.
point is the way people view Scientology, and oh, it's so just so silly, and this origin story and OT3 and this, that, no. And it's like, it isn't any different. Remember that conversation we had the other day about Adam and Eve?
Yes.
This isn't
Yes.
any different.
Um, it's no different. And since we're on the topic, and you say I might take it and run with it,
That's okay.
because I went to seminary. I am a seminarian, a biblically trained,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. I'm a Pisces, so everything spiritual, and so all those things, and some of the stuff when you get into higher level, even Christianity, when you get
Mm-hmm.
into higher level spiritual teachings, even in the Vatican. I've been to the Vatican.
Yep.
When you get to higher levels, like, there's a lot of stuff they don't tell you from the pulpit. There's a
Right.
lot of stuff they don't tell you on Sunday morning in Sunday school.
Yep.
Okay, let me
Yep.
be very clear.
Yep.
And so what I'm suggesting is this: when we talk about parascientology, when we talk about whole track, when we talk about things that go bump in the night, as LRH calls it, when we talk about these things, it's really not that far fetched. And in fact, a lot of it was rooted in the implants that Christianity and other religions gave people. It's like
Which were
crazy stuff,
based off
right?
of earlier implants prior to that,
Right,
which is
right.
whole track space opera stuff.
And finally, fast forward to 1954 or whatever, fast forward to the 21st century, 20th, 21st century, and we finally have a workable spiritual technology that addresses these concerns, these things, these bumps in the night, the boogeymen,
Mm-hmm.
demons and ghouls and gargoyles and all that stuff. When we finally find a way to address these things, people say that's insane that you would even think about that. That you would even
Right.
You have whole cathedrals with gargoyles lining the walls of cathedrals, lining
Mm-hmm.
the whole that's gonna keep the evil spirits out because the gargoyle get and fight them or whatever. But
Right.
nobody says anything about that.
Yeah.
Nobody says a word about the gargoyles.
Right. And this was long before Dianetics came out.
Right,
Long before Dianetics came out. And
right.
I
So
find
so
I find that hilarious.
No, it's laughable when people try to make it and try to demonize what it really is demonization. When people try to demonize something and don't look at things of comparable magnitude, don't
Mm-hmm.
look at other relevant data. You talk about the data analysis course on the college, like take that course. My gosh, when you look at
Yeah.
things and you're able to like really compare data and understand data in context and understand, it's just such an interesting thing. So in this whole thing, parascientology, the that which
Under that
is
umbrella. Mm-hmm.
right, everything on that, brother, that which is, but may also be out reality for some people, not be able to perceive of certain things.
Right.
So when we talk about the elephant in the room, the whole track incidents and stuff like that, it was always my understanding, and this is totally me talking right now. It was always my understanding that the whole track incidents that are talked about often were were things that came up in auditing,
Mm-hmm.
and they could not just be ignored,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because either it was prevalent or it was frequent or it was being seen multiple times, or whatever the case may be. And so it could not just be ignored. But per LRH, per LRH, the space opera and all that whole thing is actually a part of parascientology. It's not a doctrinal
Right.
truth,
Right.
doctrinal observable truth of Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
So why do people try to make such a big deal about it if it's not? That was okay. I'm glad you saw what you saw. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
do people make such a big deal about it?
Mm-hmm. I've as an auditor over time, as you audit people, you develop a pantheon of things that well, like yourself, for example.
That's a good word. Whew.
You have these busts, if you will. To me, a pantheon is sort of like, the Roman emperors, and they did busts of all of their faces and everything. And those busts, instead of faces, are phenomena, Para-Scientology phenomena. I've seen certain people that I've audited that had awarenesses and realities on things that even for me were,
Yeah.
wait a minute, say what, moments. Now the
Right.
reason, now it's one thing. It's one thing for somebody to mention something like that. It's another thing for these things to manifest and show up on the meter, and you've got this
Yeah.
validation with the meter where, okay, there's something going on there with that person and their perceptions, and what there is real to them and is affecting them, that
There you
may
go.
not have even been mentioned by Ron.
Right.
There's still more of these things, and there are some very aware and very able people that come into contact with really unusual stuff. Now, that's not to
Mm-hmm.
say that you should get stuck on it and and go off some unbeaten path and blaze your own trail. I mean, that's your right. You've got self-determinism, but the thing is you don't get into a Q&A on it. You just handle whatever it is for that person. And so
Right.
there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been categorized that we haven't even mentioned so far in this, and we've got
Oh yeah, we're going to.
tons of stuff
Yeah.
to talk on. So and this has happened throughout the ages in other philosophies and other religions, where very,
Yeah.
very unusual things have occurred. And it's important to note that in Scientology is late on the chain of events. People have been experiencing these things for thousands and thousands of years on this planet, and way beyond that. I'm just talking about on Earth, recent history, yesterday. Basically, yesterday is literally the last, geologically speaking, is the last many, many, many tens, if not hundreds of millions of years. So
Right.
there's a lot there, and we could get into that the for example, you could say it's Para-Scientology if you wanted to. They have these geologists have these pictures of rocks. Yeah, I've seen the photos, and they're not fake, they're real. And these guys
Mm-hmm.
get a hell of a lot of stuff, like Graham Hancock talks about, where in the rock there's a footprint, and that footprint was from a couple 100 million years ago.
Yeah.
Digital devices, metallurgy, all
Measured
kinds
it.
of things. So we're late on the chain on this. So that's my point, is that there is so much going on for such a long period of time that you have to change the aperture and the focal length of what you're looking at, and accept the fact that there's been a lot of stuff going on for a very, very long time, and all Scientology is a culmination.
Right.
It's the distillation, making people aware of it based off of the fact that we use the meter, and what's true for these people is true for these people, and when we get it straightened out, they are in a much better state and at cause over these phenomena. That's where I was headed with this.
What and you even said it before when you said not only is it measurable and it's getting a reaction on the meter is registering something, but you can look at a person in their face.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the tears pouring out of their eyes. You
Mm-hmm.
can see the snot dripping down their nose. You can hear changes. And no, this happened to me.
Yeah,
I'm telling you my
me
story.
too. Me too.
You can hear the changes in their vocal cords.
Yep.
How do I speak a whole different language that I never knew,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm in session and I'm speaking a whole different language?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying to
Yeah.
you?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say these things, I'm not saying stuff I read out of a book.
These
I'm
are your
telling
own
you stuff that I've lived.
experiences. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I'm telling you stuff that I've lived and I've experienced, and I know that when just because there are those that might not have all their theta perceptics, all 52 or whatever of their 52 or 56, which is it?
I think it's
52.
54. 54, I think. I
54.
always want to say 52, but I think it's 54. I could be wrong.
54. Yeah, I'm thinking 52 years, weeks in a year. um, but all of their theta perceptics turned on, and so you might not be able to perceive some things. People walk around all day
Hmm.
in today at the
Hmm.
mall, wherever you are, and they don't even know somebody's right behind them.
Yeah.
I'm like, excuse me, ma'am. Oh, you startled me. Well, I've been here for 10 minutes. What you want me to
Yeah.
do?
And that's a very good point. And I think that this is a good way to tie a nice big bow around this, is that these things that we're going to be talking about in the next many podcasts, a lot of these things may not be aware to one, may not be something that the person is aware of, whereas another person may very well be aware of some of them, all of them, whatever. But the thing is that
Right.
the beauty of auditing in Scientology, and you can attest to this just with standard book one Dianetic auditing, and having so much experience with that, is in just doing something without a meter. The perceptions that were recovered in so doing this, and when I say perceptions, I don't necessarily just mean tactile perceptions. I mean perceptions in the theta universe, other universes, that type of a thing. As you unburden a person's case with auditing, these abilities undeniably, wouldn't you agree, return?
Absolutely. And I've always made a distinction between my five senses
Mm-hmm.
and my perceptions, my perceptics, the things that
Mm-hmm.
I can perceive of in
Mm-hmm.
different ways, right?
Right.
And so, and even when I'm in auditing, I try to be mindful of that, that I'm perceiving of something, or I'll say I'm seeing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll make that distinction sometimes when I'm in session. Like I'm very, very clear of the way the way this information or this communication or whatever it is, the way it's happening. Is it something that's happening from a five sensory modality, or is this something happening from a multi-sensory modality? And and by and large, I will attest for me that I am a multi-sensory being,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have and I have multiple perceptics, and I've always been that way. I remember my great grandmother. My great grandmother's full-blooded Native American, and my great grandmother came to me, and I was 8 years old, and she said, sit down right here. And she sits in her old big chair. It was a suede, looked like a suede chair with like a gold suede chair. It was ugly, but it was big. And she would sit in her chair with her pillows, and she cut open some fruit. She'd lean over at the little table she had by her chair, and she cut open an apple. And then she'll sit the apple down on the floor like that. And she said, tell me what you see. And I said, I see an apple. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, no, look hard. Tell me what you see. And she would have me peer into these slices and these cuts of apple,
Mm-hmm.
and I would perceive of things and
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk about what I'm perceiving of.
Yep.
And that's how I was trained to look beyond the mist, to
Right.
look beyond that, whatever. And maybe some of it was putting significances into it. Maybe some of it was symbology. I get it. All that exists too.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is that when you know something, you know something,
Right.
right? When you know something, you know something. And this is what we're going to be kind of unpacking over the next this one plus the next three sessions as we close out the end of the month. Because the way we're going to be doing this, I really want to open up this conversation to it not be so weird to talk about this. We talk about 2023 now. We talk about Greek mythology,
Mm-hmm.
and you used the word earlier, a pantheon of information and a pantheon of experiences. I've been to the Pantheon in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
in Rome. And I saw how they used to, because now they changed it to all Christian saints and stuff like that. But it used to be the pantheon of gods, and you can
Mm-hmm.
go to any god you want to. And if you want to go to Dionysus, if you want to go to Athena, if you want to go to Hades, whatever, you can go to any god you want to and give offering and prayers and petitions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't normal. It was abnormal. It was normal that you could walk into this one building and there was a plethora, a pantheon of different considerations about the divine that
Mm-hmm.
I could then tap into and deal with however you deal with it. Well, now we call it mythology, right? Because we've advanced and we're so scientifically astute, whatever, whatever. And yet there's still a lot of things that we can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's still a lot of things that we don't know. And even LR8 said a lot of things that we just can't make sure that we can't say for certain,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been observed. It's there. And the observer has to keep taking a look at it, keep taking a look at it, keep taking a look at it, and maybe something comes out of it. And this is what we're dealing with. When we talk about um, the special St. Hill special briefings course,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you open up that a little bit as we get ready to close out? The St. Hill special briefings course talked about something, and it was the way LRH said it that I think really kind of like, oh, that's interesting. When he talked about ghosts
Mm.
in the St. Hill special briefings course.
Mm-hmm.
What did he say?
Well, let me pull that up here.
Yeah.
Do. 1 second. It's coming up.
No, you're fine. Because the way he said it really stood out to me, and um the way I understood it when it first showed up in my purview, I was like, that makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I totally got it. But again, for some people, it might be our reality. Um, LRH made it very clear about what did he say? You see it?
Well, it would it and it's really just a offhand comment that he makes. Interestingly enough, and the reason why it comes up. This is St. Hill Special Briefing Course 351, given on
Mhm.
the 31st of October 1963, Halloween.
Halloween.
He says, well, you have a day here, Hallows Eve, All Hallows Eve. Isn't that the date? The audit says yes. Says, well, we'll talk about ghosts. Are you a ghost? Children plague me with this. They get a lot of Scientology around it, gets in conflicts with their children's textbooks and get quite confused with definitions of what is a ghost, you see, and that sort of thing. We need undoubtedly a small textbook on this subject. You see, Scientology 1 Junior for kids, and we still do.
Mhm.
What is that? 60 years ago, this coming Halloween, he said this. A Thetan is not necessarily a ghost, you see, but everybody is a Thetan. Body Thetan minus body equals ghost. This is the first time that he mentions body Thetan,
Mhm.
1963. And this is non-confidential. All right. So
Yeah.
that is what a ghost is. And there's more on this later in the briefing course, but this is where the whole thing starts out on. And you have ridges. A Thetan can create another Thetan. A Thetan can create, basically, if you were to, a close analog would be if you had a digital camera that you put at the front door to watch for people. A Thetan can create a, for lack of a better
You mean
word,
the ring thing?
yeah, like a camera that sits there and observes.
Yeah.
You can set up an entity as part of yourself and put it there to remind you or alert you when something is coming around. Okay, Thetans used to do this.
Mm.
Thetans used to do this on the track. This would be a Thetanic sentry. Okay,
Mhm.
and you could do whatever you wanted as far as you. I mean, for lack of a better expression, it would be like lines of code in a program, and you're putting a program there that is part of your attention units that you're putting there. And
Mhm.
let's say you put it there and you never ever brought it back. Well, guess what?
Mhm.
It's still there. This is something that you handle on Excalibur, by the way, after
Wow.
you get up the other end of the bridge. And Thetans have done this a lot, a
Yeah.
lot, these points of view. Now, this is another thing where you could say it is a ghost. You've left a part of yourself somewhere. And they've actually done this like on one of the ghost hunter shows where
Mhm.
they've recorded on their digital recorders the drama that unfolded 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
You can hear the horses galloping around and men shouting and screaming and people being killed and all of this stuff as if you were in a time machine. Now we're going to talk about
Right.
time too on this Para-Scientology.
Oh yeah.
That'll take up one whole thing. But the point is that you can have this stuff sitting around for God knows, almost literally however long you want, and it can still be
Yeah.
picked up and is imbued into the physical universe as if it were a digital recorder, whether it's a ghost that's repeating it, whether it's the physical objects itself that have recorded it. And we'll get into that as well. I mean, this is a huge subject, but that's
I think.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and it's a fascinating thing. And Hillary says, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, because the bandwidth with which we can see and we can hear with a physical body is extremely, extremely narrow. But that which a Thetan can do is extremely wide. The only difference is our ability, our fruits of observation and to perceive aren't quite there yet for some of us.
It's a very narrow band. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
humans as a whole, Homo sapiens, exists on a very narrow band of survival. Like it's the slightest, the temperature too high, temperature too low can take you out.
Right.
It's a very narrow band of survival. And 3 days of no water, 7 days or however long of no food, whatever it is. Like in the grand scheme of time, we talked about time earlier. In the grand scheme of time, we exist a very small fragment of that. And
Yeah.
so we shall we say we operate a very small fragment of that. And so all I'm saying is this: I believe, this is just me talking again, but I believe that women do that a lot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Set up
Yeah.
sentries,
Sure
set up a
seems that
front of
way.
that.
It sure seems that
They
way.
can, they can. I mean, think about it. You can have a mother, and if whoever this is true for, is true for you. If it's not, I
Mm-hmm.
totally get it. But you can have a mother that is in the kitchen or wherever she's doing. She could be painting a picture, she could be cutting the grass, whatever she's doing, but she's somewhere away from her children.
Mm-hmm.
And yet she can still perceive, I see that. I see, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I saw that. How you see that?
Mm-hmm. You could say
Right?
you could say that it's maternal. You could kind of chalk it up to its maternal instincts.
Of course they do. It's
But
maternal instincts. Okay.
it's
That came from somewhere.
right. It's really that they have an ability, and they put their awareness out to wherever their children
Right.
are. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a reverse incident happen when my mom's body was cremated after she died from cancer. Was driving down the road back to Kansas City from Joplin, and they lost the mortuary had lost her body, and they couldn't find what morgue the body was in and all this stuff, and all of this stuff came to a close, and they found her, and I didn't know it. So I wasn't aware, and this is key. I wasn't aware of the fact that the what do you call it when they burn the body?
Crematory.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it had happened. So I didn't have any bias on the fact that they'd found the body and they were dispatching it
Hmm.
at the crematorium. And as I was driving down the road on the highway, I could feel the jets, the flame, and the body de-rendering. It didn't hurt,
Hmm.
but I knew at that very moment that the body, the corporeal aspect of what was left of my mom was gone,
Sure.
and it
Yeah.
released. And
Yeah.
and it's very similar to that there are these ties that the bodies
Yeah.
have and the Thetans have to these bodies, as well as the Thetan side of it. So the flow works both ways.
And I'm gonna tell you something. There's a saying: if a woman has a guy and they really connected, she could spot his ass at a Million Man March. Okay, like
that, that, that's right.
because the ARC is so high to connect
That's
whatever
right.
it is. This being is very aware of this other being, and you could be it could be a million men out there, and there he is. I see him right there, and she
Right.
assumed it was like, where's Waldo? It's like there you
Yeah,
go.
right, right. Enhance, enhance,
Right,
enhance. There he
right.
is.
And so now we keep talking about obviously physical bodies and relationships, but that kind of carries true to when we talk about body Thetan minus body equals ghost per LRH.
Mhm,
That a ghost is a disembodied Thetan,
mhm.
body Thetan minus body.
Yep.
Am I doing the math right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there isn't too much difference between a ghost and a Thetan. A
Mhm.
lot of the times that you see, especially like with the ghost hunting phenomena and everything like that, is what you're seeing is one of two things. You're either seeing a Thetan without a body that is mocking up an incident that they've been in,
Yeah.
and they're holding their position on that engram or that incident, and it's almost like a recording that just repeats because
Yeah.
they're caught in that loop
Yep.
of
It's a
whatever it
trap.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a trap, and that's why they're trapped and they haven't been able to quote unquote move on and go get another
Yeah.
body or sit on a mountaintop and watch flowers grow for 10,000 years. So,
Hmm.
and it is an interesting thing that is not any dissimilar to what we're talking about degraded beings that become so degraded that they can no longer occupy a body. And
Right.
this is something LRH observed back in 1963, and 4 years later would come up on the OT levels. Now,
Right.
the interesting thing is that what allows a person to become aware of this, and why Scientology, like they on South Park, Scientologists actually believe this, is what it says at the bottom of the screen in the South Park episode. Part of the reason why this sounds so crazy and
Love it.
why Scientology is such a fascinating subject is that through auditing you're increasing the person's awareness. You're increasing the person's awareness with more auditing, and so on. And you keep doing this, and their awareness increases, and you're pulling charge off of the case to where they can be able of perceiving these degraded beings, ghosts, body thetans,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call them, same thing,
Hmm.
as along with all of these other Para-Scientology things. And you start finding that the PC is saying, I'm not seeing this with my eyes, but I am seeing it as a Thetan
Right.
type of a thing. I'd
I make
walk
that distinction all the time.
right. I walk into a hospital. I walk into the what do they call it? The where the babies are born. What's the name of that ward? The maternity ward.
Nursery.
Yeah, the
Maternity
nursery.
work. Yeah.
I'll walk in there, and I don't. It's sort of like almost like having VR lenses, where you're it's added to the reality of the whole thing. I'm not seeing it with my eyes, but I'm seeing it as a Thetan, and I'm seeing my eyes, and they're superimposed over each other, and you see all of these Thetans hanging around in the corners of these rooms, the birthing rooms where women will have their babies, waiting for the next opportunity to jump in and grab a body. I mean, they're literally sitting there like they're waiting at the bus stop to get on a bus. And it's not,
I love
I
it.
don't find it creepy, but it is interesting. For some
No.
reason, they tend to shy away from the bodies in the room, and they're waiting there, like you mentioned earlier about the gargoyles and stuff like that. And some of them are sitting there and they're, yeah, I'm gonna get this one. This is my chance. I'm gonna dive into that thing, just waiting for that gal to come in, type of a thing. And it's a little,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
little strange, but these are perceptions I've had even when I was a kid. I could
Hmm.
exteriorize. I'd be sitting in class, and I'd see a thunderstorm line coming in, and I'd hop over to the Worlds of Fun water tower that had the colors for the amusement park there in Kansas City, and I'd sit on top of the water tower, keeping a as a Thetan and keeping my finger on the body in my elementary class, and I'd watch this line of thunderstorms come in from the top of the water tower. I don't know why I did that, but that was where I chose to view it from. So
Wow.
these, these are all things that people are aware of. And part of the reason that people aren't aware of them is because they're told, Billy, you can't do that. That's not normal, like you were mentioning earlier. And it
Hmm.
has to do with auditing, yes, but it also has to do with what people consider to be normal, and they shut you down on the fruits of your observation. And I think that that's an important
Yeah.
point to make in a lot of the parascientology things is I'm not saying you're going to be seeing the things that I've seen, and I'm also not going to say that you're seeing things that I can't see. There's lots of stuff going on here, a lot more than meets the eye. And in the body thetan area, that is something where you can, once a person's awareness level has come up, it shows up on the meter, and we handle that sort of a thing on the upper levels. And other people, American Indians, I've had conversations with guys up in North Dakota, and those guys up there, it's like talking to an OT8. I
Mm.
mean, there is no communication lag, and I'd be standing out on the street corner when I used to do roadside, and I'd be having 3-hour conversations with these guys, and it was so liberating because they didn't have all of these considerations put in that this stuff existed. To
Right.
them, it's just like, yeah, it's like what they had for breakfast, and we're just talking about breakfast. So
Yeah.
that you shut yourself off to a lot because of the way that you're taught in this society. Like you said earlier, the the Roman pantheon, which they got the gods, they got them from the Greeks. They just copied everything the Greeks did. We said, yeah, we like that,
Right.
we identify with that, we'll do that. And then when Roman Emperor Nero came in, he said, you know what, we're going to convert to Christianity. There's money in this. And this is an example of a whole society saying, no, 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 it's not that, it's this. And that's why
Yeah.
how all this stuff seems to be so weird and so crazy. But with the advent of the internet, as we move on through time, it seems to me that there are a lot more people that are open to things now than they were when I was a kid.
And that's the truth. And when we talked in the last, go back and listen to the last podcast about the future, Scientology in the future, independent Scientology in the future, because in there I talk about how I really believe that Scientology has always been ahead of its time,
Mm-hmm.
and I still don't even think we've caught up with where Scientology is in the movement of consciousness of man's consciousness. I believe that there's still some growth and advancement that we
Some
have to
work to
do
be done to catch up.
as a human race.
Yeah.
Yeah, but suffice it to say, the stuff that LRH discovered, the stuff that's talked about, it's in my opinion, is talked about in such a way where once you get it, you be like, oh, that's what they meant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what that was. When you hear in the Bible and Jesus cast the demons out of the man because he was possessed with legion of demons. Oh, that's what it means. Legion, clusters, body thing. Okay, okay, okay. It's a lot. It was a whole bunch of them on you. Okay, got you.
Mm-hmm.
And they was
Yeah.
driving you mad and making you cut yourself and scratch yourself up and throw yourself against stones and stuff. Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. How is that any different? It's not. It's
It's
not.
not.
And
That's
it's
the
not. And
point.
it's not crazy or anything like that. But obviously, to whoever the author was, it was real to them.
Yeah.
And that's
And to
that's
whomever it communicates to
right.
whomever reads it or whoever perceives of it, whoever hears about it, whoever be like, wow, yeah, oh my God, that's exactly what was going on with me. Oh, I totally understand that. Like that, it communicates with someone.
Hmm.
You have whole religions around it. You have a whole church that does exorcisms and stuff like that or whatever. We're gonna go into all that. This is gonna be a very good series. I think we're about time, but this is gonna be a very good series. I want you guys to stay tuned. I want you to share this out because we're gonna be tipping over some sacred cows in this conversation.
Yeah, and this is there's a lot of stuff here that it's that it's those types of podcasts where everybody wants to know about it, but they were afraid to ask, type of a
To talk
thing,
about, right?
because it was, well, I don't know. And that's why we're doing this stuff, is we're trying to make it okay to be OT. There's
Ooh,
nothing wrong with it. It's okay to be OT. And yes, the OT levels make you more OT, but I have to tell people it's a label. And there are an awful lot of people out there who aren't Scientologists, who aren't independent Scientologists, who have OT abilities. And all we're doing is we're giving these things definitions. Yeah.
yeah.
We're giving these things definitions, and we're putting them all out on the table, and we're saying, okay, this is what this stuff deals with. This is, you're going to run into this if you haven't already, or you've known that there's truth to this sort of thing. And all of the Para-Scientology, it's very interesting, and it doesn't get talked about much, because to us as independent Scientologists, it's just miracles as usual. We run into this stuff every day, and it's
Yeah.
okay to talk about
Miracles
it.
for breakfast.
Yeah, in the church, people don't talk about that stuff that much anymore, because it's gone down the tone scale back into the physical universe, because that's the way the powers that be want people to think in the church, because there's always this external suppress on what's really
Yeah.
going on, don't you think?
Well, yeah, because I'm telling you something. If it were me, I would be doubling down on some of the stuff that nobody likes to talk about. I would be doubling down on
Mm-hmm.
the truth of what is. I would be doubling down on, like, no, we know some stuff over here, and it's stuff that you might have to get to higher levels, and you might have to study, and you might have to get some more auditing to make it more real to you, to rehabilitate those theta perceptics and whatnot. But we know some stuff over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I I'm very proud to have discovered Scientology in a past life, and then again in this life. I'm very proud to have done that, because it's given me a way of um, validating for myself and seeing it validated in others when I'm auditing someone or whatever, and things come up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's given me a way of saying, oh, this is why this is real. This is why this makes sense.
Yeah.
This is where that comes from. And it's connected so many dots for me, as a Scientologist and a para-Scientologist. So listen, I'm super excited about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's there's a lot of this stuff where people, they get an inkling of, yeah, that's true, and how do I find out more about it, and that sort of thing. And it's terribly, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, but it's terribly personal to most people when they have an area like this, a Para-Scientology area, and they can't talk to anybody about it. There's nothing more isolating than that. Jamie and I were
Without
talking
being
about,
squashed.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jamie and I were recently talking about the realities of being an auditor. And when you go out in society and you have all this information as an auditor, and it is isolating, because your awareness level is such that it's very difficult you can't sit down at Baskin Robbins and strike up a conversation with a senior citizen who's having their double scoop of Rocky Road. Or maybe you can, but it's very
Hold on a
difficult.
second,
The-
because I'm weird like that. I
well,
remember one time
your
I
con
was at
level
Books
is
a Million.
really high.
Right. Right. I was at Books a Million at a bookstore, and I was looking at some books or whatever, and this lady just comes up and talks to me, and we just started striking up a conversation about whatever book it was at the time. And I said, "I'm sorry, but I have to ask you a question. I'm looking at you, and I see like the whole lower half of your body, like from your waist down, is
Mhm.
all black." And I say it's like a black, like a hazy, smoky, gooey looking, like whirlwind or something around it, like the bottom part of your body. And she just bust out crying. I said, "What's going on?" She says, "Ever since my husband died,"
Mhm.
we're in Books a Million, never met this woman a day, and never saw her
Right.
again either.
Right.
She said, ever since my husband died, I've been having really, really bad like circulation in my legs and all this stuff happened. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What happened with your husband, if you don't mind me asking? And she said he was fishing
Hmm.
and he was fishing on his boat, and somehow, way he slipped. His legs went up under some of the, I guess, the little seat or whatever the thing. His legs went up under there. He broke his legs, fell into the water, and drowned.
Mm.
And she said ever since then, she's been having blood clots, she's been having bad circulation in her legs, all this other stuff. And I sat there and I talked to this one. I just two-way calmed her. Nothing super
Mm.
spooky, nothing
Right. You
crazy.
just gotten calm.
I two-way calmed her. I two-way calmed with her, and she just was crying profusely, and she had no more pains.
Mm.
Miracles for breakfast.
The magic of the communication formula.
Yeah, yeah. And this was before I even knew Scientology, discovered Scientology in this lifetime. My point in saying that is that when you got a high level of confront,
Hmm.
and you just go up to somebody and be like, listen, I don't know what to tell you, but this is what I was coming through.
Right.
And boom, boom, boom. And it hits every time, man. This is some crazy stuff. Anyway, listen, I love that we're opening up this conversation, that we're tipping over these sacred cows, that we're talking about the things that people are afraid to talk about. And we're doing it in a way that is havable for most people, that they can receive it and
Hmm.
understand it from their own perspective. And I encourage you guys to comment when you see this on the on YouTube, when you see this on the site, comment about it on Facebook, comment about it,
Hmm.
talk about this, talk about what you know to be true. And I think this will open up a really, really good discussion amongst independent Scientologists. What you think?
Yep. Well, it's, it's a great roundtable to bring it out into the open and quantify it through the lens of independent Scientology. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this first installment and take a break, and then we'll get on to the second installment for next week. For myself and Quentin Stroud, again, you can get on our website, ao-gp.org. Send us a message in the little chat box at the bottom right if you have some questions, you want to comment, podcast you want to see us do, get some auditing, do a personality test, take an online course, and raise your awareness, raise your tone level, be happier in life. And there are solutions to the things that you just can't quite quantify. We can help you with that at ao-gp.org. So for myself and Quentin Stroud, we will bid you adieu, and we will see you in the next part 2 of Para-Scientology and Independent Scientology. Namaste, and we love you.
You are complete.